To avoid an arranged marriage, a millionaire CEO kissed his cleaning lady, and what she did next shocked everyone. Before we start the story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy. You'd think after making my first $100 million before 30, I'd be immune to pressure. But you've never met my mother. There I was, Leonard Leo Sinclair III, heir to the Sinclair real estate empire, sitting in a sun-drenched Manhattan penthouse, watching my mother sip her morning tea like she was about to ruin my life again. And I was right. "Leo, darling," she said in that dangerously calm tone she reserved for controlling world events and her only son. "It's time." "Time for what, mother?" I asked, pretending I didn't know. She didn't answer right away. She slid a sleek envelope across the glass table, perfectly manicured fingers never breaking form. "Her name is Evelyn Montclair." I let the name hang in the air for a moment. "Montclair," I repeated. "As in oil, shipping, and old money?" Mother smiled with all the warmth of a winter gust. "As in perfect for you." "Mother," I sighed. "You can't just arrange my—" "I'm not arranging anything," she cut in, sharp as cut crystal. "Just putting two legacies in the same room. What you do from there is your decision, of course." She was lying, and we both knew it. She'd already called Evelyn's mother. She'd already booked the engagement dinner. The press release was probably drafted. "You know I'm not ready for—" "You're 35, Leo," she snapped. "And Evelyn is smart, cultured, and wealthy. If you had half her sense, we wouldn't be having this conversation." And that's when I made the first mistake. I didn't fight. I nodded. I went along with it. That afternoon, I met Evelyn. She was everything my mother promised: beautiful, refined, calculated. She spoke 4 languages, had dinner with diplomats, and walked like she owned the art museum we were in. But I couldn't breathe around her. That evening, Mother insisted we announce our engagement at the Sinclair Foundation's gala, a formal gathering of investors, family friends, and every socialite with a champagne flute. And that's where I met her. Her. She wasn't on the guest list. She wasn't in a gown. She was in a Sinclair Services uniform, carrying a cleaning cart and trying not to draw attention to herself. She didn't. But I noticed. I noticed how she moved with quiet confidence. How she didn't flinch when the rich guests stepped past her like she was invisible. How she paused in the hallway near the gallery, staring at a painting, really looking at it, while the rest of us just pretended to understand it. Then she turned. Our eyes met. No fear. No awe. Just curiosity. I walked past her the first time. The second time, I stopped. "You like that painting?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She glanced at me, then back at the canvas. "It's a forgery," she said. I blinked. "Excuse me?" She looked at me then, really looked. "That Monet? It's not real. Brushwork's off. Color saturation's too modern. It's a copy." I stared at her. "How would you know that?" She smiled faintly. "I used to study art conservation. Before. That word hung between us. I wanted to ask what "before" meant. I didn't. I should have. Instead, I laughed and said, "Don't let my mother hear that. She donated that painting." She grinned. "Let her come after me. I have gloves and Windex. I'm ready." And just like that, I was hooked. I learned her name was Riley. She was 28. Lived in Harlem. Worked nights cleaning the Sinclair Tower because the pay was better. She didn't smile often, but when she did, it was real. She didn't care who I was. That alone made her dangerous. And perfect. I told myself I was being foolish. I had an image to protect. A legacy to uphold. But the more time I spent with Evelyn, the more I thought about Riley. The night of the engagement dinner, everything collapsed. Mother stood at the head of the table, flanked by Evelyn and her icy smile. Our board of directors toasted. The media cameras flashed. I felt like I couldn't breathe. And then I saw Riley. She wasn't supposed to be there. She was wheeling a mop bucket near the buffet, trying not to be seen. I stood up. I walked toward her. My mother called my name. I turned to the room, to the press, to Evelyn. And I said something I'll never forget. "This is Riley," I said. And I think I just made a huge mistake. And then I kissed her. Right there. In front of my mother. In front of Evelyn. In front of everyone. The room exploded. My mother gasped. Evelyn dropped her glass. The board looked like they'd swallowed their cigars. And Riley? She stood frozen. And then she kissed me back. I didn't think about consequences. Not about the inheritance. Not about the empire. I just thought, I've never done anything this real in my life. That kiss didn't save me. Not yet. But it was the start of everything that would. I woke up to 68 missed calls, 4,000 unread emails, and a news headline that read: Billionaire Leo Sinclair breaks engagement with kiss, but not with his fiancée. Riley wasn't answering her phone. My mother wasn't speaking to me. And my lawyers? They were speaking too much. "Leo," said Daniel Marks, my lead corporate attorney, pacing my office with a legal pad in hand. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I kissed someone," I muttered. "You kissed the help," he corrected sharply. "In public. During a multi-million-dollar merger dinner. With Evelyn Montclair and her entire family present." "Don't call her the help," I snapped. Daniel stopped pacing. "Fine. Riley. The woman you kissed. What is she to you, exactly?" The truth was, I didn't know yet. But I was about to find out. After 2 days of radio silence, Riley finally agreed to meet me. At a diner. In Queens. She walked in wearing the same gray hoodie I saw her mop floors in, but somehow she still looked like the most grounded person in the room. "You brought security," she said, eyeing the 2 men at the corner booth. "Just habit," I said. "They're not listening." She slid into the booth. "You shouldn't have kissed me." I looked at her. "I know. Then why'd you do it?" I exhaled slowly. "Because you were the only thing that felt real in a room full of fake." She didn't smile. "That fake just happened to be your fiancé." "Correction, my almost fiancé." She raised an eyebrow. "Is there a difference?" I hesitated. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you'd be willing to pretend to be my girlfriend for a little while." Riley blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" I leaned in. "Hear me out. My mother is livid. Evelyn's family wants blood. But the board? They're surprisingly okay with my rebellion, so long as I clean it up quickly. If you and I play this smart, we can make it look like the kiss was just the start of something serious. Give them a distraction. Buy us time." She leaned back. "Time for what?" "To figure out what comes next." Riley stared at me, hard. "You want me to fake date you? Just for a few weeks? And what do I get out of this?" "I'll double your current salary," I said. "You'll live in the penthouse. Full access to security, meals, and—" "No," she interrupted. "I don't want your money." I was thrown. "Then what do you want?" Her voice lowered. "If I'm going to be paraded around as your new girlfriend, I want something real in return." I want one favor, my brother's hospital bill covered. He's been on a transplant list for months. We can't afford the interim care anymore. I leaned back, stunned. Done. She wasn't finished. And I want to keep my job. What? My cleaning job. Same hours. Same uniform. Why? Because I won't be anyone's charity project. And if this whole thing blows up, and let's face it, it probably will, I want something to go back to. I nodded slowly. You drive a hard bargain. She stood up. No. I just know my worth. The next morning, the front page of every major tabloid featured a new headline. Mystery woman revealed, Leo Sinclair's new flame has a past, and a mop. They found photos of her cleaning the Sinclair Tower, blurbs from neighbors who barely knew her, and even a few tweets from years ago where she ranted about billionaires hoarding wealth. My mother almost fainted. She called people like us parasites. Leo, she barked into the phone. This is who you bring into the family? She's smart, I said. Braver than half the people on our board. She's dangerous. She's honest, mother. And for once, I'd like to be around someone who tells the truth. My mother hung up. Riley moved into the penthouse that night. She brought a duffel bag and a single worn-out book, The Souls of Black Folk by W. E. B. Du Bois. When I asked her about it, she said, reminds me who I am. Just in case I ever forget. She didn't touch the walk-in closet, didn't use the spa, and refused to let the staff make her breakfast. She did, however, mop the floors. Even when they didn't need it. The first time she came to a charity gala with me, she wore a $40 dress from a thrift shop. And owned the room. When Evelyn's sister approached her with a fake smile and said, "Oh, I just love your authenticity," Riley replied, "Thanks. I love your Botox." I laughed out loud. Riley did not. Later that night, as we walked to the car, I said, "You're fearless." She looked at me sideways. No. I'm just tired of watching women like me disappear. That stuck with me. The moment things began to change, really change, was during a board meeting. Our numbers were down. Investor confidence had dipped after the scandal. The team was scrambling for a new campaign. Riley, who had wandered into the conference room by accident while returning my dry cleaning, listened silently for a moment, then cleared her throat. "I think you're solving the wrong problem," she said, calm as ever. 15 suits turned to stare at her. "You're trying to patch a hole in the boat," she continued. "But the storm's in your messaging. People don't trust you because you only talk to them when you want something. Show them something real. Show them where the money goes. Let your employees tell the story." Silence. Then one director leaned forward. "Who are you, again?" "She's my girlfriend," I said. "And she's right," added another. That meeting became the turning point. Within 3 weeks, our PR campaign shifted to feature our real employees, our community projects, and the story of a janitor-turned-CEO from one of our subsidiaries in Atlanta. The press called it the rebranding of the decade. Our stock bounced back. And Riley? She got a nod of approval from the same board that once laughed behind her back. I saw it happen in real time, the shift. The respect. The growing tension in my chest that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't fake anymore. Not for me. But for her? I couldn't tell yet. And I was afraid to ask. I was no stranger to powerful women. I was raised by one. Dated several. Was almost engaged to one who carried more titles than emotions. But none of them unsettled me like Riley did. Because Riley could ruin me. Not by scandal. Not by gossip. But by making me feel. 3 weeks after the boardroom PR miracle, Riley and I were scheduled to appear at a private investor dinner in the Hamptons. A quiet weekend with hedge fund billionaires, tech moguls, and the types of people who made empires rise or fall with a nod. And of course, my mother was hosting. "Riley," she said through a forced smile the moment we arrived, "how lovely to see you again. You've certainly stirred the pot." Riley smiled back sweetly. "Some pots need stirring." Mother blinked. The guests were polite, until the second glass of wine. Then came the whispers, the judgmental glances, the passive-aggressive questions disguised as compliments. "You're not what I expected, dear," one old heiress told Riley. "I get that a lot," she replied, sipping her water. Later that night, Riley sat barefoot on the stone steps behind the mansion, looking out over the ocean. I found her there, barefoot in a borrowed shawl, the wind tossing her curls around her face. "I didn't mean to make you a target," I said. She didn't look at me. "You didn't." She was quiet for a moment, then asked, "You really think I belong in a room like this?" I sat beside her. "No." She turned, caught off guard. "I don't think anyone belongs in rooms like this," I said. "They're built to make people feel small. Even the ones who built them." She looked back out at the waves. "It's hard to know what's real sometimes." I wanted to tell her she was the only real thing I had left. Instead, I said, "You made them listen. You made them rethink everything. That's not the same as being respected. Respect takes time. But fear? That you already have." She laughed softly. "I don't want them to fear me." "No," I said, turning to her. "But I do think they should respect the woman who saved their company from collapse with nothing but a mop, a sharp mind, and zero tolerance for BS." She finally looked at me. And for a split second, I saw it. Something real. But she looked away just as fast. When we got back to the city, the cracks began to form. It started with a call from Evelyn Montclair. "Leo," she purred. "I just wanted to say, congratulations." I paused. "For what?" "For the performance. You really sold the cleaning lady Cinderella angle. Bravo." I said nothing. "You always liked dangerous games," she added, her voice dropping. "But remember, I know you. And I know how this ends." She hung up. And just like that, I realized the people around me had started digging. The next day, I got a call from Daniel Marks, my lawyer. "We have a problem," he said. "A real one." He emailed me a folder marked Riley Kane, unsealed. Inside were scanned eviction notices, a community college dropout form, and a sealed record from her teenage years. Nothing major. But enough to spark media carnage if twisted the wrong way. "This won't stay buried forever," Daniel warned. "You need to either make this relationship legitimate or end it." I hung up on him. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Because for the first time, I realized, Riley had secrets too. The next day, I called her into my study. She walked in with a rag in her back pocket and a calm I knew was her armor. "I didn't waste time. They're digging into your past." She folded her arms. So I need to know if there's anything that can be used against you." She didn't answer at first. Then she said quietly, "When I was 17, my mom OD'd. I was the one who found her. I stopped going to school. Got arrested once for trespassing while trying to sleep in the back of an old church. Spent a night in juvie. That's the record you're asking about." I nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me." She took a step forward. "But let me be clear. I'm not ashamed of what I survived. And if that costs you a merger or a handshake from some suit in the Hamptons, so be it." I should have said something noble. Something comforting. But instead I just stared at her and said, "I don't care what they think." And then I kissed her again. It wasn't a staged kiss this time. It was the kind that left no room for pretending. We didn't talk about it. Not that night. Not the next day. But everything had changed. She still cleaned the floors. She still avoided the guest suite and slept in the same tiny room she'd picked on the first night. But something in her had shifted. She started humming. She started smiling. And one evening, when I found her curled up reading her old Dubois book, she didn't look up, she just said, "If I fall for you, Leo, don't make me regret it." "I won't," I promised. But life, as always, had other plans. Because that night, I got a message from a confidential source. One line. "Someone close to you is feeding information to Evelyn Montclair." And the next morning, Riley was gone. The first sign something was wrong. The mop wasn't leaning in the corner like it always was. The second sign? The security cameras had no footage of Riley leaving the building. She was just gone. No note. No text. No trace. And I felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer to my chest. "I want every entry point reviewed," I barked at building security. "Check footage. Back entrances. Underground loading bays. Roof access. Everything." "Yes, sir," the guard replied, eyes wide. "But the cameras in the east corridor were disabled last night." "Manual override." I froze. "Who has access to manual override?" He hesitated. "Only 5 people, sir." "Yourself." "Me." "Head of security." "Mrs. Sinclair." "My mother." "And Daniel Marks, my legal counsel." I called Daniel first. "Leo, you're overreacting," he said smoothly. "Riley probably just got tired of the circus. The media's tearing her apart. She wouldn't just vanish without a word. Maybe she realized she was in over her head." I hung up. Then I called my mother. She didn't pick up. That alone told me she was involved. That afternoon, I drove to the Sinclair estate. Stormed inside without knocking. Found her in the solarium, drinking tea as if she hadn't just sabotaged my life. "You took her," I said. Mother didn't look up. "Don't be melodramatic. You scared her off." She sighed. "I protected you. From a scandal you don't even see coming. She wasn't using me. She didn't have to. You handed her everything. She saved this company. She's still a cleaning lady with a record and a sick brother." I stared at her. "You really don't see it, do you?" My mother finally met my eyes. "I see a son who's fallen for a girl because she makes him feel something. But Leo, feelings don't build empires. Strategy does." "I'm not building an empire anymore," I said, backing away. "I'm building a life." And she was the first piece of it that made sense. Back at the penthouse, the silence was suffocating. I walked past her empty room a dozen times. Sat on the edge of her stripped bed. Held the worn copy of The Souls of Black Folk she'd left behind. She wouldn't have left that unless she planned to come back. Unless someone made her leave in a hurry. And that's when I saw it. Inside the book, a torn scrap of napkin. From a diner in Queens. With a phone number scrawled on the back. I dialed it. A raspy voice answered, "Yeah. I'm looking for Riley Kane." The voice paused. "Depends who's asking. My name is Leo Sinclair." Silence. Then a long breath. "I'll tell her you called." Click. 2 days passed. Then one night, just after midnight, I got a knock at the penthouse door. When I opened it, there she was. Soaked from the rain. Hood pulled over her curls. Eyes red but alive. She walked in without saying a word. I stood frozen. Then, softly, "You left." She pulled back her hood. I didn't have a choice. What happened? She swallowed. Your mother found my brother. Threatened to stop his treatment unless I disappeared. She said you were being manipulated. That I'd cost you everything. She did what? I didn't leave because I was afraid of your world, Leo, she said. I left because I was afraid of ruining it. I stepped closer. But you didn't ruin anything. She looked at me. Didn't I? I didn't answer. I just reached for her hand. And she let me. The next morning, the headlines exploded again. A leaked recording of Evelyn Montclair admitting to paying a Sinclair staff member to dig into Riley's past. A photo of my mother having lunch with a media executive, someone who ran the outlet that had published Riley's sealed juvenile record. And worst of all, an anonymous source revealing that a board member had offered Riley money to disappear. It wasn't just betrayal. It was war. I called an emergency meeting of the Sinclair board. Riley sat beside me. This time, she didn't wear a uniform. She wore a fitted black suit and a calm expression that screamed, "Try me." Gentlemen, I began, what you've allowed to happen under your watch isn't just unethical, it's criminal. Leo, one board member tried. You're being emotional. No, I said, standing. I'm being exact. I dropped the folder on the table. Inside, contracts, recordings, surveillance photos. The legal team had done their job. Effective immediately, I continued, those responsible for targeting Riley Kane are being removed from this company. And if anyone in this room objects, they can join them. The room fell into stunned silence. Riley looked over at me. For the first time, her eyes didn't question me. They trusted me. That night, we walked into the penthouse together. No cameras. No audience. No pretending. I opened a bottle of wine. She curled up on the couch. I sat beside her. I don't want to fake anything anymore, I said. She smiled faintly. You haven't for a while. I know. But I needed to say it. She leaned her head on my shoulder. And whispered, okay. You can only outrun the truth for so long before it catches up. For me, it happened during a live interview on a national finance show. I was supposed to talk about new Sinclair ventures in sustainable real estate. Instead, the host leaned forward and asked with a syrupy smile, so, Leo. Is it true you broke off your engagement to Evelyn Montclair for a cleaning lady? They didn't even say Riley's name. Just, cleaning lady. I took a slow breath and looked into the camera. No, I said. I broke off my engagement because I realized I was about to build a life with someone who didn't believe in truth. Riley Kane? She's not just a cleaning lady. She's the woman who helped me rebuild my company, challenged every assumption I had, and stood tall in a room that tried to shrink her. So if you're asking whether I left a polished heiress for someone real, then yes. I absolutely did. The anchor blinked. And just like that, the truth wasn't just mine anymore. The media went wild. Social feeds were split. Half of the headlines read, "Billionaire falls for the Maid, love or madness." The other half read, "Leo Sinclair speaks the truth, and it's about time." People started paying attention to who Riley really was. Not the mop. Not the past. But the brilliance behind the woman. They learned about the community literacy program she'd started back in Harlem. The volunteer hours. The fact that she still worked part-time at the same place even after moving into the penthouse. One reporter called her the reluctant icon of corporate accountability. Riley hated the attention. But she handled it like she handled everything, with quiet grace and razor-sharp wit. Things changed after that. We started getting invited to conferences. Together. She spoke on panels. I listened. She challenged rooms full of old money and fragile egos. And they listened too, even when it stung. And behind the scenes, something else began to happen. We stopped pretending. We stopped guarding the distance. The lines blurred. She started staying in my room. Not because of headlines or convenience, but because it felt right. And then one night, after a board meeting gone sideways, I came home to find her waiting in the kitchen with a pot of tea and a stack of investor reports. She handed me one and said, "You're losing the Chicago deal because your numbers are bloated." I stared at her. "How do you know that?" "I read faster than your CFO." I laughed. "Remind me again why you're not running this company?" She looked up. "Because I don't want to fix your empire. I just want to make sure it doesn't burn down on your watch." And then she kissed me. Soft. Sure. No hesitation. And that was the moment I knew. I was in love with her. Not just, "I care about her," love. Not, "this could work," love. The kind that rearranges your DNA. The kind that makes you want to give up the fortune if it means you get to keep the person. But life wasn't going to make it that simple. Because just when the dust began to settle, the Montclairs struck back. They filed a lawsuit. Alleging character defamation, breach of contract, and reputational damage due to the broken engagement and subsequent, public slander. It was laughable on paper. But they had money. Influence. And a legal team with enough venom to poison a whale. Our advisors told me to settle. Riley told me not to. "If you settle," she said, "you're telling the world they were right." "So we fight?" She nodded. "We fight." The case went public. The trial became a media circus. And Riley, despite everything, sat in the courtroom every day beside me. Calm. Composed. Unapologetically present. The opposing side dug into everything. Her past. My history. Her brother's medical bills. Even her tweets from 2013. They painted her as a grifter. An opportunist. But then our lawyers brought the boardroom transcripts. The footage of Riley's initiatives. The timeline of how she turned the company's trajectory around. And then I took the stand. I told them everything. How I kissed her to escape an engagement I didn't want. How I offered her a fake relationship that turned into the most real thing I've ever known. How her courage saved more than my company. It saved me. The jury ruled in our favor. The Montclairs lost. And Riley? She walked out of that courtroom with her chin high and my hand in hers. That night, I didn't take her to dinner. I took her back to the penthouse. To the rooftop. Where the city lights stretched like a sea of stars below us. She stood at the edge, arms folded, wind in her curls. "Why do I still feel like it's not over?" she asked. I stepped behind her. "Because we're still climbing." She turned. "And what happens if we fall?" I pulled out the small velvet box from my pocket. And said, "Then we fall together." I didn't expect her to say yes. Not right away. Not with everything we'd been through. But when I opened that ring box on the rooftop and asked her to fall with me, Riley didn't blink. She just whispered, "Only if we rise together." And that was it. No grand speech. No paparazzi. Just two scarred people choosing love, not for the first time, but for the first time right. The next morning, I made it official. I called a full executive meeting and told them, Riley Kane would be my fiancé, and my strategic advisor. Effective immediately. You should have seen their faces. The same board that once called her a liability now had to smile and nod. But not everyone smiled. Some faces tightened. Eyes narrowed. And one of those eyes belonged to Claude Harrington. My CFO. A man who shook hands while counting your pulse. A man I trusted with my books for a decade. Big mistake. A week after our announcement, strange things started happening. One of our development sites in Atlanta was shut down for safety concerns. A memo about an upcoming acquisition was leaked, one Riley and I had only discussed in private. And then came the worst of it. A private email between me and the governor's office was published in a business gossip blog, completely out of context and rewritten to look like I was bribing officials for zoning permits. Within 12 hours, I received notice, a full-blown SEC inquiry. Sinclair Holdings stock dropped 9% in a single day. News anchors used words like scandal, corruption, and collapse. I barely slept that night. Riley did. She curled beside me like peace itself, hand on my chest, heart steady. Like she'd seen storms before and refused to believe this one would sink us. "I'll fix it," I whispered to her in the dark. She opened her eyes, barely, and said, "We will." The next morning, she was already at the kitchen counter when I came down, coffee in one hand, laptop in the other. "I found something," she said, not looking up. She spun the screen toward me. An email trail. Encrypted. Hidden behind a VPN. Masked as legal correspondence. But what it contained was crystal clear. Kickback invoices. Shell companies. A paper trail tied to Claude Harrington. Not just financial sabotage. Embezzlement. And worse? He'd been feeding Evelyn Montclair everything. The mole was right inside my vault. I wanted to fire him. Press charges. Burn the entire board down and start over. But Riley stopped me. "We don't just punish him," she said. "We use him." "Use him how?" "We trap him. Publicly. So anyone else thinking of trying this again knows, betrayal doesn't just get punished. It gets humiliated." The plan was risky. We called an emergency board meeting and told Claude we were considering removing Riley from her role to ease investor concerns. He smiled like a man who thought he'd won. We gave him rope. He hung himself with it. By the end of the meeting, Claude had slipped up, bragging about insider knowledge, even referencing leaked information no one had shared publicly yet. That's when Riley pressed a button under the table. A private live stream feed went public. Tens of thousands of viewers, including our shareholders, heard every word. And just like that, Claude was done. Arrested within 24 hours. Sinclair's stock bounced back 11% the same week. And Riley? She became the company's legend. The victory was sweet. But what happened afterward was even better. We visited her brother, Marcus, in the hospital. He was recovering well after his transplant, fully funded, of course. When I walked into his room, he tried to sit up, awkward and embarrassed. Riley introduced me as the idiot who kissed her in front of 1,000 cameras. He grinned. "She deserves better." I nodded. "I know. But I'm trying to be good enough." We talked for an hour. "Before I left," he said, "just don't break her. She's made of tougher stuff than she looks. But even tough stuff has limits." I promised him I wouldn't. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Investors returned. The board got cleaned out. And one day, while Riley and I were painting her brother's old apartment in Harlem, barefoot and covered in blue streaks, she turned to me and said, "This is what I want." "What? Paint?" She laughed. "No. A simple place. Quiet joy. No headlines. No boardroom wars. Just this." I dipped a brush into the paint and whispered, "Then we'll build this. Brick by brick." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "With or without the empire?" "With or without it." And I meant it. But empires don't go quietly. Because just when I thought we'd finally found our peace, I got the letter. Hand delivered. No sender name. Inside, a threat. You may have cleaned the boardroom, Leo, but the rot goes deeper than you think. Not everyone plays by your rules. And some of us? We don't want peace. We want payback. No signature. Just a gold insignia stamped at the bottom. A Montclair family crest. And beneath it? One word. Wedding. Weddings are supposed to be joyful. Ours began with a threat. Not from paparazzi. Not from angry shareholders. But from the one family I had tried to forget, the Montclairs. I sat in my office staring at the gold-embossed envelope, rereading the single word over and over, wedding. Beneath it, a date. Ours. How they knew, I had no idea. Riley and I hadn't even made a formal announcement. We were planning something small, just family, close friends, something simple. But now, it felt like a war zone disguised as a ceremony. Cancel it, Daniel, my attorney, said as soon as I showed him the letter. You want to marry her? Do it out of town. Quietly. Secretly. We can hire someone to officiate in Italy or Switzerland. No. He blinked. Leo, this could be dangerous. That's the point, I said. They want us scared. Quiet. Hidden. I'm done hiding. Daniel wasn't the only one who was worried. Our head of security recommended metal detectors. Our event planner had panic in her eyes. Even the florist asked if there'd be body armor required for the centerpieces. But Riley? She just stared at the invitation and said, let them come. We chose a rooftop garden in Brooklyn. Surrounded by the city skyline, strings of soft golden lights, and chairs for no more than 30 guests. No press. No cameras. Just love. But love, it turns out, had a few enemies on the guest list. 2 nights before the wedding, our officiant was arrested. False charges. Dropped 12 hours later. But the message was clear, they were watching. They were pulling strings. That same night, our baker's van was vandalized. Someone left a smashed cake at our door with the words, "She'll never be one of us." I thought Riley would cry. She didn't. She grabbed a towel, cleaned the mess, and said, "We'll bake our own cake." That's when I realized, Riley wasn't just marrying me. She was standing beside me in a battle most people would run from. The morning of the wedding, the city glowed gold under early summer light. I stood on that rooftop in a charcoal suit, palms sweating, heart pounding, trying not to picture Montclair spies behind every bush. And then she walked out. Riley. In a simple ivory dress. No diamonds. No veil. Just her hair pulled back, eyes steady, and a smile that could knock down walls. I'd never seen anything more powerful. Or more beautiful. She walked toward me like she owned the sky. And when she reached me, she leaned in and whispered, "You look like a man who almost ran away." I thought about it, I whispered back. But then I realized, there's nowhere safer than standing beside you. We said our vows. Mine were honest. Hers were brutal and tender. There wasn't a dry eye in the place, until the first bang. Not a gunshot. Fireworks. Real ones. Exploding over the Hudson. Only, we didn't plan any. Our guests gasped. Riley gripped my hand. And then came the plane. A small private jet flying overhead, pulling a banner behind it. The banner read, "A maid can clean your floor. Not your name." Silence. Riley's face didn't change. She just turned to me and said, "Should we dance?" I blinked. Now? She nodded. Let them watch. And we did. We danced. Under that insult. Under their petty cruelty. Under the sky they couldn't control. And slowly, the guests began clapping. Then joining us. We didn't let them win. But the Montclairs weren't finished. A week after the wedding, I got a call from a trustee of my inheritance fund. "Leo," he said, voice grave. "There's been movement." "What kind of movement?" "Your grandfather's legacy trust. The one worth $2 billion. Evelyn's legal team filed a challenge to the conditions." My stomach dropped. "She's claiming breach of expectation. That you were morally bound to the union. That breaking the engagement and marrying Riley violates a social contract built into the trust. That's absurd. She's well connected. And she has a judge's signature." I hung up. And stared out the window for a long time. I'd promised Riley I'd choose her over inheritance. Now it was time to prove it. That night, I told her everything. That we could lose the trust. The backup trust. Even Sinclair Tower itself if this went far enough. She sat quietly on the edge of the bed, listening. When I finished, she said the one thing I feared most. "Then let it go." I stared at her. "You don't understand. That money was never yours if it came with chains. It's generational wealth. So create your own. Without the ghosts. I built everything on that foundation." She touched my hand. "Then maybe it's time we build something better. Together. From the ground up." The next day, I called a press conference. Not to beg. Not to fight. But to surrender, strategically. I stood in front of the same cameras that once covered my kiss. And said, "The Sinclair legacy means nothing to me if it means giving up the woman who changed my life. I choose love. I choose honesty. And if the price of that choice is my inheritance, I'll pay it in full." The world erupted. Half thought I was a fool. The other half said I was free. But the part that mattered most? Riley took my hand afterward, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Now I believe you." We lost the trust. But we gained something else. A different kind of power. Authenticity. People saw it. Believed in it. Backed it. We launched a new firm, Kane and Sinclair, focused on ethical development, minority-owned partnerships, and sustainability. Investors flooded in. Not because of the money. Because of the message. It wasn't a loss. It was a rebirth. But just when we thought the past had finally stayed buried, one final shadow stepped out of the dark. It happened at our launch event. A woman approached me at the bar. Elegant. Mid-40s. Red lipstick. Diamond brooch. "Leo Sinclair," she said. "I've waited a long time to meet you. Do we know each other?" I asked. "Not yet. But you knew my father." "Who's your father?" She smiled. "Martin Crane. The man your grandfather ruined. The man who died penniless while Sinclair Realty rose." I stared. "I'm not here for money," she said. "I'm here for answers. Because you're not the only one with a legacy to untangle." I thought I understood where I came from. Thought I knew the sins of my family, the scandals, the skeletons we kept in polite closets. But nothing had prepared me for her. Her name was Marlene Crane. And she didn't come for headlines. She came for history. "You want answers," I said, handing her a drink. She nodded. "And you want to believe your grandfather built his empire clean. But he didn't." She placed an old envelope on the bar between us. Inside were black and white photos, legal documents, and a contract signed by my grandfather, alongside her father, Martin Crane. "They were business partners once," she said. "Crane and Sinclair Real Estate. Until your grandfather secretly bought out city officials, rezoned their projects, and pinned the debt on my father. He lost everything. Died bankrupt. I read the documents in stunned silence. There were letters. Pleas for help. My grandfather had never responded. Marlene looked me in the eye. You weren't there. But you're still carrying the wealth that betrayal built. And just like that, the air in my lungs disappeared. That night, I told Riley everything. She listened in silence, her fingers interlocked with mine. Do you believe her? She asked. I don't want to, I admitted. But the documents, they're real. Riley nodded. Then maybe it's time we do something the Sinclairs never did. What's that? Make it right. We invited Marlene back. This time, to our office. She walked in wearing the same red lipstick, but less armor. I handed her a file. Inside, a deed. A land transfer. An apology letter. And an offer. Kane and Sinclair would fund a redevelopment project in the same district her father was pushed out of. But under her leadership. Her company. Her name. You'd give this to me, she whispered. No, I said. I'm returning what was stolen. For the first time, her eyes softened. Maybe you really are the first Sinclair to change the story, she said. Maybe, I said. But I had help. Riley smiled. The press caught wind of the partnership. And this time, the headlines were different. From betrayal to justice, a new era for the Sinclair name. The woman behind the billionaire's redemption. But not everyone was pleased. Some legacy donors pulled out of our projects. Old money circles whispered that I was soft. And I didn't care. Because we weren't building for them anymore. We were building for the future. And the future looked a lot like Riley. But the past still had claws. One morning, we received an anonymous email. Subject line, "You're next." Inside was a single image. Our building's blueprint. With one office circled. Riley's. Attached was a voice memo. A man's voice, distorted but clear. You should have walked away, Leo. You had your money. Your girl. But now you're digging up bones that were meant to stay buried. One more step, and she pays. I froze. Riley walked in behind me, coffee in hand. She saw my face. What is it? She asked. I showed her the screen. She stared at it for a long moment. Then calmly placed her coffee on the table. Okay, she said. Let's go find out who wants me dead. We called in cybersecurity, law enforcement, and private security all in one day. The message had come from a proxy server, bounced through 6 countries, 3 shell email accounts, and encrypted metadata. But Riley? She didn't sit still. She combed through internal company communications, reviewed vendor logs, and connected something none of us had noticed. A tech contractor we'd fired 2 months earlier, for incompetence. He'd worked on the Blueprint network. Had full access to floor plans. And had ties to one name we thought we'd buried, Claude Harrington. Our former CFO. Currently awaiting trial. But not inactive. He'd been working from behind bars. Calling in favors. Paying off disgruntled former employees to sabotage our rise. We turned everything over to the authorities. And I made one more call. To Claude's lawyer. You tell your client, I said, voice low, if he ever even thinks about my wife again, I will stop playing clean. And next time, it won't be court papers, it'll be federal charges. I hung up. And for the first time in weeks, I breathed. The next day, Riley stood at the front of our office's main floor. She held a team meeting. Staff from every department packed the room. She stood in front, holding nothing but a clipboard. I know some of you are scared, she said. So am I. But we don't build something new by backing down. We do it by showing up. By doing the work. By telling the truth, louder than anyone can threaten us. Applause. Tears. Hope. She didn't just lead the company that day. She led me. That night, we sat on our balcony. The city below felt different now. Less intimidating. More ours. Riley leaned her head against my shoulder. I used to dream about changing my life, she said. But I never imagined it would look like this. I turned to her. Do you regret it? She smiled. Only the parts before you. I kissed her temple. We still have one last shadow to face. She looked up. The Montclairs, she asked. I nodded. They're not finished. They lost the battle. But their war isn't over. She held my hand tighter. Then let them come. We thought the worst was behind us. The betrayals. The scandals. The courtroom battles. But the Montclairs don't retreat. They reload. It started subtly. A slowdown in international approvals. Partnership deals falling through in the 11th hour. Investors quietly pulling out without explanation. And then we found it. An offshore holding company linked to Evelyn Montclair had acquired 22% of Kane and Sinclair stock. Through dummy firms. Through people we trusted. They hadn't just been watching. They'd been buying. And now they were inside. Daniel delivered the news like a surgeon breaking bad test results. If they hit 25%, they can block any major initiative. Influence policy. Leak private votes. They could bury you from within. How did this happen? I asked. Riley didn't flinch. Because we were building something real, she said, calmly. And they were building a trap. We had a choice, fight back, publicly, or dismantle the very thing we'd built. I turned to Riley. What do you want to do? Her answer was immediate, burn the whole boardroom down. And start again. So we went to war. Not with lawyers. With truth. We released a full transparency report to the public, every donor, every board vote, every initiative, every failed deal. Then we invited journalists inside our HQ for the first time. We told them everything, including the Montclair sabotage. And it worked. Shareholders rallied behind us. Smaller investors pooled together to dilute the Montclair block. And in the middle of it all? Riley. Delivering speeches. Leading town halls. Standing in front of crowds that once doubted her, and turning them into believers. But Evelyn wasn't done. She went for the kill. A full-scale media smear campaign, fabricated rumors about Riley cheating, about insider trading, about misuse of company funds. Fake screenshots. Fake texts. One photo even showed Riley with a man she hadn't seen in years, cropped, edited, timed to imply something sinister. The headlines roared. Cleaning lady CEO caught in secret affair? I found her on the roof that night. Alone. Cold wind in her hair. Her arms crossed, jaw set. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just said, I knew this would come. I'll kill the story, I said. No, she whispered. Let them post it. Then let's destroy it. The next morning, we live-streamed. No PR team. No script. Just the two of us. In our office. Riley told her story. The whole story. Her childhood. Her brother. The mopping jobs. The night I kissed her. The fake relationship that turned real. The boardroom betrayal. The courtroom victories. The wedding slander. And the smear campaign. She ended with this. You called me a maid who couldn't clean a name. But I'm not here to clean names. I'm here to build legacies. Real ones. With truth. With courage. With fire. And if you think you can scare me back into silence, you don't know me at all. Over 3.5 million people watched it live. Within hours, the hashtag Riley built this was trending worldwide. The fake stories were pulled. Retractions followed. And Evelyn? She disappeared. We later learned she sold her stake silently to a trust controlled by a retired philanthropist, who turned around and donated it to us. Riley was speechless. I wasn't. I found the philanthropist. A sharp-eyed 80-year-old woman in a red scarf named Lydia Hemsley. When I asked her why she did it, she said, because she reminded me of the girl I used to be, before the world tried to quiet her too. After that, it was like the storm had passed. No more whispers. No more sabotage. Just peace. But we didn't sit idle. We launched the Crane Foundation, named after Marlene's father. A mentorship program for women in business. We opened 5 schools in underserved neighborhoods, each named after a woman in Riley's family. And one night, while dancing barefoot in our living room, Riley looked at me and said, "I'm not cleaning other people's floors anymore." I kissed her hand. "No," I said. "Now you build the ceiling." But before we could write the final chapter, one final surprise arrived. A letter. No stamp. No return address. Inside, a sonogram. With one handwritten line, "See you both soon." Riley read it. Then turned to me. "I guess we're building more than just a company." I laughed. I cried. And then I dropped to one knee. Again. This time, not for a ring. But because the future I never thought I'd have, was now bigger than anything I'd ever dreamed. It rained the morning our daughter was born. Not the kind of storm that shakes windows, but the gentle kind, like the world was washing itself clean for something new. I sat beside Riley in the delivery room, clutching her hand as she breathed through the pain like a warrior. She didn't scream. She didn't panic. She just looked at me between contractions and said, "Whatever happens, don't faint." I didn't. But I came damn close. We named her Luna Grace Sinclair. Luna, for the night Riley used to dream under, alone in Harlem. Grace, for the thing that saved me when nothing else could. She came into the world quietly, eyes wide, fists curled, heart steady. Just like her mother. When we brought her home, the world slowed down. No headlines. No board meetings. Just bottles, blankets, and the soft weight of a future we created ourselves. Some nights, Riley would fall asleep with Luna curled on her chest, and I'd just watch them, 2 souls that turned my empire of stone into a home. I used to think power was in towers and numbers. But power? Real power? Was right there, in the rhythm of my daughter's breathing. One afternoon, I walked into our home office and found Riley sketching something by hand. Blueprints. A new project. Not for towers or retail. But for a free business school. For women. Low income. Formerly incarcerated. Abandoned. Invisible. Just like she once was. "I want to build a place," she said, not looking up. "Where women like me don't have to wait for a miracle kiss to be seen." I kissed the back of her neck. "Let's build it." We called it the Grace Institute. Launched it on Luna's first birthday. Every press outlet showed up. But we didn't talk about investments. We talked about resilience. We talked about legacy. Not the kind written in trusts or vaults, but in people. In names once erased, now etched in stone. The keynote speaker? Marlene Crane. She stood on stage, held up a photo of her father, and said, "What Leo and Riley have done here is proof that legacies can be rewritten, not by the rich, but by the brave." The crowd stood. So did I. Years passed. We didn't just survive. We thrived. We built. We taught Luna how to walk, how to ride a bike, how to challenge systems that tell her she needs permission to matter. And one day, when she was about 6, she asked Riley, "Mommy, did you always want to marry Daddy?" Riley laughed. "No, baby. I wanted to mop his floors." Luna giggled. "Then why did you marry him?" Riley looked at me. "Because one day, he stopped looking down, and started seeing me. As I sit here now, older, softer, more whole than I ever imagined, I realize the truth. I didn't rescue the girl with the mop. She rescued me. She took the filth out of my soul, wiped away my illusions, and built something clean in their place. Not a fairy tale. A foundation. Not perfection. But love. Stubborn. Sacred. Unbreakable. So no, this isn't the story of a billionaire who saved a cleaning lady. It's the story of a cleaning lady who reminded a billionaire what it means to be a man. A partner. A father. A builder of better things. And together? We didn't just fall in love. We built the life we never thought we'd deserve.